Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how I mix skin tones with just 3 colors and also with my gouache. The specific colors that I have are Flame Red, Pure Blue, and Permanent Yellow. These aren't the actual primary colors, but over time I have found that colors like this gives you much more natural looking skin tones rather than the bright and vibrant colors you can get with the cyan, magenta, and yellow. So we're going to be using these, and one of the very first things you want to know when you're mixing these colors is that mixing them all together will get you this very nice dark brown. If you were using somewhere closer to the actual primary colors, you would actually get something very close to a pure black. But when you're mixing your skin tones, all of the colors you want to get is actually just a mixture of these 3 still, just in different quantities. So just remember that the closer you are to mixing them in similar amounts, the closer your mixture will be to something like black. And if you add white, it's just going to be gray. So we're going to be mixing neutral, warm, and cool skin colors. And I'm going to be working my way up from dark to light. Now I want to start with my darkest neutral skin tone. And since I like my neutral skin tones to have a slightly greenish undertone, I'm just going to be adding more blue and yellow because the blue plus yellow equals greens. So I know to add more of those two than the red. And as you can see, this video actually ended up adding too much red and not enough blue, so I'm just gonna slowly add more of that until I get it to a point where it's the kind of brown that I want. And now we're going to be mixing our cool dark skin tone, and I always sort of start with the kind of undertones I want to see. So because I like seeing a purple hue to my cooler skin tones, I'm just gonna start with a purple by using my red and blue, and then slowly just neutralizing that with the yellow. So we're really mixing all these 3 colors together, and we're learning to work with the quantities enough so that the yellow is just slightly nudging the purple back to its dark brown roots, but also making sure that we're not adding too much yellow so that it fully gets there. We're just slowly taking it away from being pure purple. So now when we're mixing our darkest warm skin tone, we're doing the same thing where we're just starting with the kind of undertones we like. And I like my warm skin tones to have this very yellowish orange undertone. So I'm starting with an orange, and I'm doing that by mixing my yellow and my reds first, and then slowly adding in the leftover color, which is the blue. So it's very important really to not add too much blue, because then we would lose that warm hue that we want. So we're just slowly adding that in. If you do end up adding too much blue, that's okay, you can just add the other 2. So when you really think about it, it's a very simple process. After you learn the concept, it's mostly just mastering your quantities. So when we're mixing in our lighter skin tones, I'm just gonna add white, and we're just starting with the undertones that we want, but this time we're just adding white to that. So first thing I did was mix in my green using my blue and yellow, and then I just added some white to that. And then I'm just slowly adding in the red to neutralize that very bright green. So when I'm mixing my cooler version of that, it's the same thing. I'm starting with my purple And again, I'm just adding more white to that. So this is my blue and red with a lot of white. And then I'm just slowly adding in more yellow to offset that very vibrant lavender. And you can also see in this case that I've added more red and blue after that, because I just think that I maybe added in too much white initially, so that's why I'm bringing it back with all of my other colors. But once again, just making sure I've added more of the red and blue than just the yellow. And so now when we're going back to mixing our warmer version of that, it's the same thing. I'm just adding white to the undertones that I want. So this is white and yellow initially, and then slowly adding in the other two colors. And after that, it's just a matter of adjusting your colors. So when it leans too much to a certain color, you just add in its complementary color or the opposite color in the color wheel. So right now you see that this is too green, so therefore I know to just add in more red. If it's hard to remember what the opposite color is, it's okay, because you can just see that it's the leftover color in your initial primary colors. So since green is blue and yellow, you just know to add in the remaining color in your initial primary color. So in this case it's red, and I'm just mixing that in until I get to a point where it's the exact hue and tone that I want. After that, I actually think it gets a little bit repetitive. What I'm doing is just I'm adding in more white than the other colors. So you see for this next one, it's just the red and green plus a lot of white, because green is the kind of undertone that I want to see in my neutral skin tones. And then once again, I'm just slowly mixing in my red until I get it to a point that I want. So after those two, I actually think that we're going to be working with very similar concepts. So I'm going to take this time to talk about some tips in mixing these colors with gouache specifically, because I know gouache is just a lot harder of a medium to navigate, especially when it comes to mixing your own colors. So the first tip I have is that with gouache, your darker colors will always dry lighter and your lighter colors will always dry darker. So when you really want to mix these nice and dark colors, don't be scared to overshoot your darker colors and not add too much white, because it really does start to get frustrating when your paints just dry a lot differently than what it looked like while it was on the palette and you're mixing it. So don't be scared to overshoot your darker colors. And the opposite thing also goes for your lighter colors. You will see that when they dry, they just don't look as light as when you're mixing them. So don't be afraid to add a lot of white and lighter colors in there. And this goes into my next advice, which is to use your student grade and your artist grade gouache very differently. So when you're using artist grade gouache, the colors will just have so much more pigment in them, so they could easily overpower your white. And so don't be scared to add a lot more white than if you were using your student grade gouache, because then I would actually advise to use your lighter colors in place of the white, just so that you are not giving enough room for the white to gray out your other colors. So now when we are slowly getting into our lightest skin tones, starting with my white first, and you can also see for this one I've tried a different technique where I just added in all of my colors with the white and mixed that so I can see which way the colors are leaning. So there I can see that it is just looking a little bit too red, and so I know what I need to do is just add in the other two colors until I can see that it's the exact hue that I want, and then just added in more white to get it to the value that I want. And see that you can add them any which way that you want. What's really important is the amount of paint that you're adding. So when I'm mixing in my cooler, lighter skin tone, it's the same process where I'm starting with the very lavendery purple and then going in with my yellow. And when it became too green, I just added in a little bit more of the red to bring it back. So it's the same process. The only difference from the last one before this is that I just added in more white. And then the same thing goes for the warmer version of that. It's just a lot of white and a little bit of the other two. And I think you can see that in this one I'm being more careful not to add too much red or blue, and that's why it just took me this once to mix in the exact hue that I want, because before this I really underestimated the potency of the other colors. For this next set, I am actually going to show you how you don't have to mix these same colors all the time, that you can just readjust your pre-existing mixture by adding in a little bit of color to them. So the first thing we're going to mix is actually our cooler light skin tone. So this is just a very light pink with the tiniest amount of blue in there, and then slowly adding in the yellow. But you can still see that this is more of a pinkish undertone, and so this is going into my cooler light skin tone swatch. And then I'm going to show you how I used that exact same mixture to mix my neutral skin tone. And this time what I did is just add in some blue and yellow to that, and I'm being very careful to not add too much. I'm actually using them as more like watercolors than gouache, by just adding in the tiniest tinge of green to that. And then we are doing the same thing with the warmer skin tone, just adding in more yellow to the mixture that we already have, and now we have just this nice and warm lighter skin tone. So now when it comes to mixing in our lightest cool color, what I'm actually doing is just using my colors as almost like watercolors. So I'm just adding the tiniest tint of color to my white, and just using my red and blue in there to mix this really nice and pinkish undertone. And I'm just doing this because my red is actually a little bit warmer than the primary red. If you were using magenta for this wouldn't be possible, because you would still end up with a very bright purple. But since I have a slightly warmer red, this works. And all I had to do was just add in the slightest tinge of blue in there to get in this exact pinkish skin tone that I want. And for my last neutral skin tone, I just added in more blue and yellow to that, because pink just means there's more red, and so we add in its opposite color, which is green. For my very last skin tone, I am mixing my lightest warm undertone skin tone. So I'm actually redoing it by just mixing my yellow and white first, and then adding in a little bit amount of the other two, not too much that it overpowers the yellow, because we still need this to be a warm skin tone, and then just adding a ton of white to that to get it to a value that we want. So that is it for all of the skin tones that I mix using just these 3 colors. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me, and I will be seeing you guys again soon.